So Nextwealth was founded by two of the founders of Nextwealth are right here on the front row, Dr. Mita and Anand Talwai, with the primary purpose of creating employment in small towns. So we were founded about 15 years ago. I've joined the journey a couple of years back. Today we are about 5,000 employees across 10 locations in mostly tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 locations across India. And a lot of the work that we do is enabling AI through the human intelligence part. I think the impact that we create, I think to a large extent, at least where it's most visible and visceral for me is when I visit our centers. I see a lot of people who are, like essentially we are employing people who are from those locations. And having grown up in a city, in nuclear families, lived a nuclear family life, like many of us over here, I think I think on two fronts, it's kind of keeping the work part of it aside, right? I think the impact part of it, I think on two fronts is really gratifying, if I may use that term. One is economically. Economically, you see that, okay, they're staying with their parents, many of them, they're fresh out of college. Their mom packs their lunch box. They come home, they go back, sleep at home. So the total economic value that accrues to the family and the family unit is far higher. And that is something where, if someone is making a certain amount of salary, what portion of that goes back to the family. So that's kind of good to see. It's visible. You can kind of sense and feel that. And especially in the case of girls, it's even more visible because they tend to save a whole lot more and hence the family benefits a whole lot more. I think on the societal side as well, it's again a very different feeling where you'll see there are many of the people working, they'll have family members in other teams. Like when I say family members, cousins, brothers, sisters, or they go back, like there's any family event. So the community essentially stays together. I think for too long, we've kind of taken for granted, a lot of us who've been in cities, many of you mentioned about being in the US. I lived there for a few years myself. We are also kind of take it for granted that that's the natural course of things. But then when you actually see communities that have stayed together over generations, at least for me, that's a very meaningful contribution I feel that we are able to make through the work.
Yeah, and you're also helping people stay where they are, right?
Yes.
They don't have to come to cities, they don't have to migrate and find
Yeah.
a way to work over here.
And implications on things like diet and attire to everything, right? I mean, there are all these little things, but yeah.
But the question I have for you is that the fact that you're working in AI is sort of, I would say to some extent, immaterial in the sense that the objective of what you're trying to do is to really raise the economic well-being of women, in the places that you are in. But the question I have for you is that right now you're working with 5,000 people, right? As you think about this, what would it take to scale this to 500,000? What would it take to scale this to 5 million? How, as we are thinking about breaking ceilings or going beyond ceilings, how do we think about this at scale?
And I think that's probably where the business side of what we are in comes in and starts being relevant, where what we do is as I call it, the human part of the AI. And I think the term that's used quite a bit is human in the loop. Typically, that's used to refer to preparation of data for training of models. However, increasingly what we are seeing is that the deployment of AI is actually very minuscule today in today's world. A lot of it is still just being in development or spoken about. But where people have deployed AI, right, where there's a few organizations that have done it at reasonable scale, there's an emergence of a new term that's called user in the loop. And the genesis or the necessity of that comes from the fact that AI in its very fundamental architecture is probabilistic. And because it's probabilistic, one thing it's guaranteed to be is it's guaranteed to be not accurate all the time. And at some level in the application pipeline, you need to have humans as users of the system who are either real-time or offline kind of validating the output. Now, the other thing that we've noticed in those specific cases where we've seen organizations successfully deploy AI in production, it's basically a productivity enhancer. And anything that's a productivity enhancer is deflationary in its economic impact. And what we've seen, at least in a certain set of use cases, I won't say for all, but in a good enough number of use scenarios, deflation causes consumption to shoot up exponentially. So what we've seen is the exponential increase in consumption or utilization of these models has led to a tremendous growth in the employment potential for the practical usage of these models. So our belief and bet is that in the next coming 5 to 10 years, the world is going to see a far higher adoption of AI in the real world. And as they see that, the need for that user in the loop kind of a capability, who's the human who's guiding, monitoring, training, evaluating the AI will only increase, and that's kind of where we see the next several million jobs being created.